Welcome everyone. This is Bill Lester here, and in this video we're going to cover pesticide labels. What kind of information should be on the label and what kind of information you can find on the label. The information found on pesticide labels will tell you how to use the product safely, how to use the product effectively to get the kind of results that you want to get, how to use the product in a way that protects the environment, and that helps us be good stewards of the land that we're using. Pesticide labels contain a lot of information on how to use the product in a way that helps protect wildlife. If there's any restrictions or concerns about using this product near water, near a wetland, near wildlife areas, that's going to be contained on the label right up front so you can follow that information so you're not damaging wildlife. The label also contains information on how to keep yourself safe when using this product. Whatever kind of personal protection equipment, which we're going to get into much more in just a little bit, you're supposed to wear while using, while mixing, while using, while applying this product will all be clearly stated on the label. A lot of people think that because a pesticide is sold over the counter at a big box store, it must be safe to use. That way you can go out there in nothing but a pair of shorts and a pair of flip-flops and use it. That is not corrective personal protection equipment. Everything that you need to wear when using that product will be on the label. So for those reasons, I want to stress to you before you use any kind of pesticide to read the entire label. And of course, whenever we're dealing with clients, we're giving any kind of pesticide recommendations, we want to give them the brief lecture on reading the label and being safe when you're using the product so that you can be safe, your neighbors, your pets can be safe, and the wildlife in your neighborhood would be safe also. One of the most important parts of any pesticide label is the active ingredients that are contained in it. You really don't want to go by too much the trade name, the pictures on the front, all the guarantees. You want to immediately go to the bottom corner and look at the active ingredients that are in it because that's what actually makes up the pesticide. A lot of scientific research, testing, and a lot of money goes into the creation of every product's pesticide label. They do a lot of testing on all the different potential effects that this product can have on people, non-target plants, non-target organisms, aquatic organisms, bees. That's a very important topic now. And as a matter of fact, on any kind of pesticide label, if it poses any kind of danger to bees, they have a special bee section on the label that states that clearly and what you want to do to avoid damaging any bee or pollinator populations. I've read before it costs companies upwards of about $100 million to develop, test, and bring a new product to market. So there's an awful lot of time, many years worth of time, effort, money, and research that goes into gathering all the information on the label. Now, it's very important to remember that every pesticide has a brand or a trade name. This is the name that the manufacturer assigns to it, and we really don't want to be referring to pesticides by that name. So when you're talking about a potential herbicide, Roundup is a very common product, but the active ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate. So if we're recommending something like that, you want to recommend the common name of the chemical, which is glyphosate, and not the trade name, because the trade name might infer that we support one company over another, even though there may be a number of manufacturers that make a number of different products that all contain that one same active ingredient of glyphosate. The specimen label here is an example. They gave the name Glyphamax to it. You can see the little R next to it. That's a registered trade name. The active ingredient in this would be glyphosate, which is found in a number of other pesticides. So when we're talking about pesticides, try to always refer to the common name of the chemical and not the brand name. Here's a very good example of two different products that have different names, different looking containers, different manufacturers, but they contain the exact same active ingredient. So if this ingredient was recommended to you to apply in a certain situation to solve a certain problem, you could use either one. As you see, the percentages or concentration of both these products is the exact same. So there really wouldn't be any difference between these two different products, even though they do have very different trade names. Pesticides can also be broken up by their use classification. Pesticides are classified as either general use. These are the ones that you would find available for you to purchase, any homeowner can, at a big box store or a lawn and garden center, or other ones are restricted use pesticides. A restricted use pesticide, you need a license from the state of Florida to purchase them, to mix them, and to use them. Those are some of the chemicals that a professional lawn care service might use, or a commercial grower. Normally, you would never ever run across them. If you buy a house and you look in the shed, you may find things in there that say restricted use. You should not be messing with restricted use chemicals because they can be extremely toxic. Sometimes they're only used in special circumstances, and then they're also divided. Something that might make them a restricted use pesticide is the effects the pesticide has on the environment. So if it has very strong effects, if it leaches very quickly through sandy soils, it may be restricted use. Every label has a list of the ingredients that are contained in that container of that product. It identifies the name of the ingredients and the percentage that's in the container. It's broken up by common name, which is the common name of the chemical, and then the exact chemical name of it also. So you can see in this product, it contains glyphosate, which is the common name of the chemical, and then the exact chemical name. Every pesticide has a unique EPA registration number, which may be important for first responders, or if you have to seek medical assistance, they may need that information. And then also the name and address of the manufacturer if they have to be contacted because of a problem with the use of that chemical. All labels also have information on the physical or chemical hazards of that chemical. So many pesticides have to be stored in a specific type of container. If you store them in the wrong container, it may dissolve, it may catch fire. Many of them have to be stored within a certain temperature range. If it becomes too hot, they could explode. Some are flammable. If they become too cold and freeze, that's going to disrupt the chemical composition. It might separate or cause problems. So any restrictions or information on this is clearly written out on the label. Pesticide labels have all the safety information that you need to know to use this product safely. Pesticides are also broken up by the type of signal word they have. This is a word that is going to be very clearly stated on the very front of the label. It ranges from the most toxic, which would be danger, poison, and it actually has a little picture of a skull and crossbones on it. Those are all restricted use pesticides, so you would hopefully never encounter one of those. The next less toxic one going down the list would have a signal word of warning. That means it's moderately toxic, down to a signal word of caution, which is slightly toxic to slightly non-toxic. Pretty much every pesticide will have at least one of these signal words on it. Very, very few are so non-toxic that they're not going to have to be required to have any signal word on them. All the first aid information you might need for using these products safely is right on the label. It will tell you what part of the body might be most affected. It may be most dangerous from breathing the fumes, from accidentally getting some on your hands, on other body parts. Some are most dangerous if they get splashed up in your eyes. So the label will spell that out pretty clearly. Shows the different routes of exposure that you need to worry about. Like I said, it might be the fumes from breathing them in. It may be splashing in your eyes. And then what to do if you're accidentally exposed to it and you need to seek first aid. Here we have an example of some first aid information here. Many times there's going to be information on what you would do if you accidentally get some in your eyes, if you accidentally swallow it, any other information about it, any dangers this product poses to domestic animals or other people who might enter the area after you sprayed, after you put down the treatment, is all going to be right here on the label. Here's an example of some additional information about hazards that it could pose to humans and domestic animals. And like I mentioned earlier in this video, all the information that you need on personal protective equipment will be right on the label. We also refer to personal protective equipment as PPE. That is the equipment that you need to wear when you're mixing this chemical or applying it. So at a minimum, all labels will call for closed-toed shoes, long pants, long sleeve shirt. Many times, if the fumes are dangerous, it's going to call for some type of breathing equipment, some type of face mask. Even if the directions don't call for it, you always want to wear some kind of eye protection, because if you're leaning over mixing these chemicals and a little drop or two splashes back in your eyes, that's going to be a big problem potentially. So even if it doesn't call for eye protection, you want to be sure to wear it. But if there's any special information about how to properly use this particular product, it will all be spelled out very clearly on the label. Here's a picture that shows the difference in pesticide exposure on somebody's hand when they were wearing gloves and the other hand when they were not wearing gloves. You see on the right hand side, they get quite a bit of exposure when not wearing gloves. But even on the side where they were wearing gloves, you could still potentially get a little bit of exposure. So with some chemicals, it's going to call for very specific equipment. It'll say the gloves need to be made out of a certain material, so you always want to follow that information to give yourself the greatest degree of protection. Any environmental hazards posed by this product will be on the label. Many pesticides, if you follow the directions, you mix it correctly, you wear the correct personal protection equipment, can be used very, very safely by people, so it's not going to endanger you or your family or other people using the areas. But many of them, even if small amounts get into a waterway, can be extremely toxic to aquatic organisms. So all that information will be spelled out very clearly in the environmental hazards section of the label. The largest part of the label is going to contain the directions for use. Make sure that the plant, animal, or site that you want to treat is listed on the label. You can't use insecticide that's labeled for vegetable gardens on your lawn. You cannot use insecticide that's labeled to be used on turf on your vegetable garden. The label has to say that it can be used on the plant or area or situation that you want to use it on. The label is going to tell you how much to use, including how to mix it, how much of the pesticide, how much water you're going to mix, and then the size of the area that you can treat per gallon. The label also states how often you can use this product. If you can use it again in 2 weeks, it will say so. And many pesticides and fungicides can only be used a certain number of times per season. You can't just keep using it over and over as often as you want. That will all be spelled out very clearly on the label. The label will also tell you the list of pests that can be controlled by that product. So if the crop or site you want to use is listed, but the pest is not, you can still use that pesticide, but there's no guarantee it's going to work. So basically, the label has to say that you can use it on the site that you want to use it on. If you're trying to control a specific insect and the label does not say that it controls that insect, you can still use it. It may not work on that insect, but you can still use it legally. And then if there's any possibility that this product is going to be phytotoxic on your plants, that means that basically this product is going to burn the leaves or burn the plant foliage in the sunlight. That's going to be spelled out on the label also. The label also gives you any specific information about how to store it and dispose of the empty package when you're done. Like I said earlier, some of these things have to be stored within a certain temperature range. They can't get too hot, they can't get too cold. You have to be careful of what kind of container you might want to put them in to store them in. Some containers you can use safely, other types of containers you can't. If there's any special information about disposal, it will be on the label. Many times it's recommended that you should triple rinse the empty pesticide container and then pour that rinse water into your sprayer or whatever other application equipment you're using. Many of these, the empty package can be just, after it's been rinsed out, disposed of in the trash. If that can be done safely, it'll say so on the label. If it has to be specially taken to the dump or landfill for toxic waste, that will be on the label also. Very important. You need to be very careful on how you store these pesticides. Don't store chemicals in the house where children and other people can get a hold of them. It's best to keep them out of reach of children. This is the law. You don't want to store already mixed up pesticides or pesticide concentrate in any kind of container that might be confused with something that somebody might drink. There's all kinds of horror stories where somebody mixed up a chemical, stored what was left over in a Gatorade bottle, a soda bottle. Somebody saw it, made the mistake of thinking that it was something you could drink, and then got very sick from it. So be very careful that these things are kept under lock and key is always the best rule, and that you limit the number of people that have access to them, and that you put it in a container that's clearly marked with exactly what kind of pesticide it is, the brand name, the chemical name, and then the strength that it's mixed at. That way, if anybody does get into it and there's an emergency, the emergency responders will have the information that they need. Thank you very much, everyone. And as always, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. This is a very important section. Pesticide safety is very important for all of us to practice, but it's also very important when you're dealing with the general public to always remind them of that and always stress them of that. A lot of people don't read the directions, don't read the label until afterwards, after something really bad has happened. But with pesticides, you want to be very careful to understand what you're using right up front. So thank you very much.